Good people, sanibonani, uMakeba lo. So now we'll be doing grade 10 graphs. So some function, which is question 5 from that paper, November 2019. Now let's get into it. So here we are having this function here, which is the hyperbola from grade 10, and we're having this function here, which is straight line. So here, from the information that we have, they are saying the equation of the horizontal asymptote is y is equals to 1. So this dotted line that is here, they are telling us is an asymptote of f, which is an horizontal asymptote. And they are telling us that graph G, which is a straight line, cuts the axis at B. So cut this at B, which is an x axis. I hope you know if this is an x axis or an x intercept, tells us there's our y at this point is what? Tell me, it's 0. And graph F and G intersect each other at what? At A. So what is happening here? We call this point a point of intersection because both of the graph they intersect at this specific point, which we call it a point of intersection. Probably you remember when we have the point of intersection, that's where we equate both two graphs. But we're gonna get there. Probably they're gonna ask us that type of a question the more we move on. Now, let's answer the questions. The value of y, so write down the value of q. So q is what according to this, remember q is your y asymptote. Now they told us the horizontal asymptote, which is the y asymptote, is what? Is y is equals to 1. So the value of q here is equals to 1. I hope you are still together there. Okay, guys, now we are going to find the domain of f. Now remember, my f is my hyperbola graph. Now remember, the domain, it's the values of x where my function f exists. The values of x where my function exists is here. These values of x as I go this side. Now remember, as I go here, as you see, my graph doesn't this value of x, which is what? Which is 0. And then coming back on this side, now the values of x here, they go also this side and also they go this side, but they don't touch this value of x that is here, which is what? Which is 0. So my domain is the x of the element of real numbers, but my x will never be equals to what? Be equals to 0. That's my domain. Now, determining the equation of the line of symmetry of f that has a negative gradient. Now, this is very, very important because now, if we are determining the equation of the line of axis of symmetry, they do give us the gradient. That is very important. In this case, remember, the gradient is usually 1 or negative 1, but here they told us that is a negative gradient. So my negative gradient is going to be equals to negative 1. Now, remember, in order for you to find the equation of a line or any line in terms of the straight line, we need a gradient and a point. Now, how do we find the line of symmetry? We use the point of the asymptote. Now, that is very important here. The line, the coordinate that we use is the coordinate of the asymptote. So in this case, since my y asymptote is this one and my x asymptote is what? Is 0. So the point here is going to be 0 maps to 1. The point that is being formed by the y asymptote and the x asymptote. Now y is equals to mx plus c. Now my gradient here is what is going to be negative 1, and then my point that I'm going to use, my y here, is going to be 1, and my c and my x is going to be 0, so I know my c is what is going to be 1. So the whole equation is going to be y is equals to negative gradient negative x and then plus that 1. Now that's the line of symmetry. Now determining the equation of f. Now my f, now let me write my f down. In this case is going to be equals to k into x plus q. Remember, we already know what's the value of q is 1, so we know this value is 1. Now let me just write it here because we've already found it. That is 1. Now again, in terms of looking at this graph, we need to know what is going to be the sign of this k. Is it going to be a positive k or a negative k? Since this graph is on the first quadrant and the third quadrant, this tells us that the value of k here is going to be a positive k. So now that is very important. Before you go and answer the question, you need to know your value of k in terms of the sign, because if you get another one in terms of the sign, then we can see that probably I made a mistake somewhere somehow. Now again, we do really need a point in a graph of our hyperbola in order for us to substitute and find this value of k. Now, which point do we have here? So because this point is not on the graph, now the point that probably we can find is this one here at B, but that point now is a point of intersection which involve this graph here of a straight line. So remember, I told you that this is the x-intercept. So if it's the x-intercept, my y is what here? It's 0. So if I can solve here and say now, into that g of x is equals to x plus 2. I know my y is 0, so y is equals to x plus 2, and then this goes to the other side, so my x is going to be negative 2. So the point of b is going to be negative 2 map 0, which is also the point in the hyperbola graph. Now using this point here, substituting it here in order for me to find the value of k. Now let's substitute it there. So I know my y is going to be 0, so it's 0 is equals to all over my x is negative 2, and then my plus 1 here. Now taking this one to the other side is going to be negative 1 is equals to all over negative 2. Then from here cross multiply, so my k is going to be equals to positive 2. Does my k make sense? Yes, it does make sense, because my graph is on the first quadrant and the third quadrant, and the value of k has to be positive. Now, and after that, I have to write the whole graph now. So my f at x is equals to 2 all over x and then plus 1. Now, this is a full equation of f. Now, here they're saying now let's calculate or determine the coordinate of what of A, which is this point here, a point of intersection of F and G. Then the point of intersection, which you call it the point of intersection, where now this y is equals to y. So the y of F and the y of G, they're gonna be equal at this point. So we need to equate both of our graphs. Now let me get a space here. Probably we have written everything here. So now my g of x is going to be equals to my f at x. So my g of x is x plus 2 equals to my f at x is now 2 into x plus 1. Now let's solve for x here. Now taking this to the other side is going to be x. Now 2 minus 1 is going to be plus 1 is equals to 2 all over x. And then from here, I need to cross multiply. So here I'm going to have 2 into x squared plus x. And then take these two to the other side, is going to be 0 into x squared plus x and then minus 2. And then from here, we're going to have to factorize. So here is going to be now the factors of 2, that's going to give us this one here, because x, and then it's going to be the 2 and 1. So this has to be a positive, and then this has to be a negative. Now this and this give us this, plus 2 minus 1 give us positive 1 here. So the first value of x is going to be negative 2, and the another x is equals to a positive 1. Now minus 2, we already know that this is a point of intersection, and we did calculate this point using this one here, and we also get to minus 2, which is probably does make sense because this is also the point of intersection. Now this x is equals to 1 is this point that we have here um at A. So we know the x there is 1. Now let's go and find the y. So we're going to substitute it here. So you can substitute in either one of the equations, but let's choose as the easiest one, which is the g of x. So if I know that my g into 1 is equals to 1 plus 2, which is going to give me what? Going to give me a 3. So now therefore the point of A is going to be 1 map to a 3. So now this is at the point of A where G and F, both of them, they intersect. Now this is 3. Thank you so much guys for watching. Makebalo.